What kind of sharing am I doing? Did you have questions? Sorry? Oh, blockchain. Sure. So, been doing talks and conferences and interviews all day. So I'm not going to do another talk right now, but essentially can do a short overview of what we do. Essentially, it started with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a money system built on a decentralized database. At some point around 2012, many different people in the world felt that we should build many more things on the same sort of decentralized database architecture because you can build more trustworthy systems on that sort of architecture. And lots of different projects were tried. The most successful of those projects by far is a project called Ethereum. So I worked on that project for a year when we were getting close to releasing version 1 of the Ethereum platform. I started a company called ConsenSys. ConsenSys essentially works to achieve the vision of the Ethereum project. It does many different kinds of activities. We build products. We do enterprise, government, central bank consulting. We do a lot of educational work, and we do capital markets activities. So building custody systems for tokens, building exchanges, doing venture investing in lots of different projects, and doing token launching via our token Foundry group. So on the product side of things, we build developer tools. We have seen about 600,000 downloads of our developer tools and helped to build by far the largest developer ecosystem. According to one of the best analysts at Gartner, the ConsenSys developer ecosystem, or the Ethereum developer ecosystem, is about 40 times larger than the second biggest blockchain ecosystem, which is based around IBM's Fabric technology. And we at ConsenSys have built infrastructure that handles from the Ethereum ecosystem and related ecosystems about 8 billion queries per day. And queries are things that are over and above transactions. So in the public Ethereum network, we handle somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million transactions per day directly on the Ethereum network. Those are transactions or writes against the public Ethereum database, but there are many other kinds of activities that happen, reading and logging events and other kinds of queries, and our Infura infrastructure handles those sorts of data requests. We have many different projects at ConsenSys on the product side of the company. Many of those projects are organized as networked business models. So the idea here is that we have a new kind of construct for delivering services and products instead of companies delivering services to consumers or other businesses, often in an adversarial relationship. We have this new idea, this networked business model, where lots of different people and companies can take on different roles in a network, and you can construct the network via something called mechanism design, where you define the goals of the system and you design the rules of the system, and you can incentivize the behavior of all the different actors in different roles of the system via tokens that happen to have value in that ecosystem. And if you design things properly, then the selfish behavior of all those different actors in different roles can enable the system goals to be achieved. And so if you build one of these things, maybe for the music industry or supply chain or education or journalism, you can potentially have a network of different actors creating an ecosystem or a microeconomy. And if that microeconomy is serving lots of people, then through supply and demand, the token could actually become much more valuable. So anybody who's contributing value to the network and holding that token could benefit. And so that token essentially represents a consumer utility token, and that is a different sort of token from investor tokens. We have heard recently from the SEC in the United States that the Ether token on the Ethereum network is considered a consumer utility token, and that the SEC does recognize this new business model, this new way of coordinating activity to create value. And so we anticipate that that is going to be a tremendous source of activity going forward, and our token Foundry project is uniquely configured to build out those kinds of systems, because we have a lot of brilliant mechanism designers on the team, and we have the ability to construct those tokens properly, and even more importantly, or as importantly, to market those tokens properly, because if you sell a properly constructed token, but you market it as an investment, you market it as, by selling it to speculators in large quantities, then it may end up being seen as a security token. Let me leave it there. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I saw Mr. Leung have some question, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Joseph. First of all, we got to praise you for your wonderful contribution in creation of Ethereum. Secondly, I'm actually picking up the question Tony just asked to Alex. Ethereum has facing a lot of problems nowadays, more expensive, and also a lot of congestion. So what's your reforming ideas there? What's next?
Yeah, so testing. At rush hour yesterday, Uber was facing a lot of problems. The prices kept going up because more people were trying to use the Uber network. So there's nothing wrong with variable pricing in the face of differentials in demand. It's absolutely the case that the Ethereum technology and all the blockchain technologies are immature right now, and we are essentially in phase one of our ecosystem. We're just about at the end of phase one. Phase one sees all the transactions on these networks processed by all the nodes, and all the nodes storing all of the data on the networks, and it's not actually that bad. There are pruning mechanisms and other kinds of efficiencies that are in existence on Ethereum already. But we're moving into phase two. Phase two already has some elements that contribute to scalability. So there are state channel mechanisms that are live right now. There are sidechain mechanisms that are just coming live, and so there will be many layer 2 technologies that enable tens, hundreds of thousands of transactions per second of scalability for certain kinds of applications. So this year we'll see game systems, we'll see exchanges on layer 2 technology. So those will be blockchain systems that are linked into Ethereum via different kinds of mechanisms. One of those mechanisms is called Plasma. Plasma is a technology that will enable you to have a whole bunch of ERC20 tokens or other standard tokens on your high scalability blockchain system that you'll be able to move to the safety of Ethereum if it becomes necessary, if something happens on the system, or just if you want to move it between these different other blockchain systems.
Okay, we have the question there. Thank you.
Hello, Joseph. You mentioned about the U.S. SEC regulator probably going to look at stepping this tokenization areas and probably going to do something about it. And just a couple of weeks ago, I heard the news in the UK, the FCA, which is Financial Conduct Authority, also they come up with Sandbox. They defined 26 different scenarios inside of sandboxes going through this, what they call the tokenization process, whatever. Did you see there's a trend to transform, particularly from the regulator perspective, to look at the ways to more going through the regulations and compliance as part of process?
Yeah, so I think what the SEC is doing is different from what the FCA is doing. The SEC is applying securities law the way it has applied securities law for decades. Chairman Clayton of the SEC indicated that there won't be any grandfathering of old projects, that all blockchain projects that used token mechanisms to raise money will have to conform to securities law. They made some positive statements about Bitcoin being a decentralized system and Bitcoin not being a security, and Ether, for the same reason, not being a security. They made positive statements about these consumer utility tokens. If they're constructed and marketed properly, they wouldn't be considered a security, and this is a fundamentally new construct. But they will, we believe, apply securities law to many different projects that did market something that looks a lot like a security, and a security is essentially an investment where you are hoping to profit by the agency, by the work of others, which is different from that network business model where everybody's working together to create value. The FCA has, I think, less focus on token models, or let's say less focus on ICOs or token launches, and more focus on fintech applications that make use of blockchain technology. So they create an infrastructure or a context in which you can interact regularly with regulators and essentially get the benefit of their expertise. There's an SEC official, I think her name is Hester Pierce. She wrote a blog post a handful of weeks ago about sandboxes, and she felt that instead of creating a sandbox for different projects to play in, which is really quite constrained, and you've got regulators sort of giving you little pieces of sand and giving you little shovels of a certain shape that you can use. She felt that that was an overly constraining environment and not an environment that would foster innovation. So she felt that the better model is to take a somewhat hands-off approach early on and be a lifeguard, be sort of watching from a high chair and making sure projects don't get into too much trouble, but not really structuring how those projects think about innovation.